Beyond.
Wait, I'm late every time, guys.
No, it's okay. Brian and I do it back.
We had like a chorus there, and then it's fine.
Yeah, I liked it. It's working out. Yeah. Beyond and hello, everyone. My name is Jonathan Dornbush. I am your host for this week's episode of Beyond, podcast episode number 543.
All right.
543.
Yeah. I'm very excited to be here with you guys. Today, I am joined by Alana Pierce.
Hey, what's up?
Brian Altano.
Hello.
And Tina Amini.
Hello.
How are you guys doing?
We're good.
Doing
Very
pretty good. Some exciting stuff this week.
Oh, yeah.
It is
to
talk about.
It is a packed week, and we have so much to tell you about this week, including Rage 2. It's real and not just a silly leak on Walmart Canada any longer. We're also going to be talking about Sony's E3 press conference. We have a better idea of what they're going to be showing off, and it's some really exciting games, which you may have heard of before. We're also going to be talking about Days Gone, because there is a lot of new information and gameplay out there to see about that game, as well as we're also going to be talking about Square Enix is having an E3 press conference and a new Superhot as announced.
Sweet.
This is a very busy week.
Lots
There's a lot going on.
I haven't slept at all just because we've been writing.
We're at that pre-E3 period of time where we're kind of getting the announcements slowly, and at this point, I just feel like May is just like E3 beta.
Yeah,
like the whole month.
Well, it makes sense
pre-E3, if you will.
Yes, pre-3. It makes sense to get your stuff out early so you have like an actual day or two of coverage.
It also allows you to beat all of the leaks that will inevitably happen when Teamsters take photos of the stuff they're building inside of the convention.
And that's
center.
one of the curious
Except for
things
Rage
about
Yes.
Rage,
Yep.
which we will talk about, is I really wanted, like, they had the leak from Walmart, and then immediately afterwards they made that Photoshop with paint that was like, you did it wrong, Walmart, and tweeted that from their accounts, and then from Bethesda, and then they've had this marketing campaign. Was this all planned? Or is this in response to the leak?
Yeah, so if you haven't been following along, there was a big Walmart Canada leak of a bunch of games listed on the site, which may or may not be real. We know Rage 2 is real, but other things that were listed were
That
new.
was the one that I believed the least, so
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they're all real.
So there was
Forza Horizon number 10.
Fine.
Yeah, it just
that one.
skipped one. Yeah, so there were a lot of games on there, including Borderlands 3 and new Assassin's Creed. So games you would assume are probably coming out, but that we haven't heard anything official about. And then a few days later, we did get official confirmation of Rage. But Bethesda liked to play into the leak. They realized like we might as well make the best of the situation. As you were saying, the Rage account came back from the dead and started tweeting and mocking the leak and other things coming. And then they put out like 30 different photos of teasing Rage 2 effectively. But they finally showed a trailer. It's a CG trailer first.
Yep.
And that was the first look we got. There's also a gameplay trailer coming out that will be out as the show is already out.
5/14.
We have not seen it, so you will have seen it. We hope it's good. But we did get this first CGI trailer, which shows a lot of Mad Maxian Rage-like people rocking out to Andrew WK.
Even the PR email we got about the teaser was sort of tongue-in-cheek about all this. It was sort
Yes.
of like, oh, you probably haven't heard about this game by now, but here it is.
Again,
So,
I really wonder if they had planned this to announce it early. They did do that with Fallout 4. I remember they announced that before E3, so it could have been planned. But
Considering how much they're like rolling into this now, I feel like it's a possibility. Whereas before I was like, totally, this is reactionary.
Yeah.
And it was a smart reaction.
Yes, absolutely. I think my guess would be the reveal and the gameplay that we'll see was planned, but the amount of photos they put out teasing 514 and all this stuff, and the trailer announced Monday,
you
data
couldn't
stuff.
make this trailer in a week.
Yes, yeah. So I think some of it played into the leak, but this was definitely planned, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
so far it's feeling sort of like Mad Max meets Splatoon in terms of art direction,
Yeah.
which I dig.
Because of the pink?
Yeah, it's just like hot neon everywhere, just exploding, which is just weird. This is one of those things that I don't think a ton of people ask for. So it's up to Bethesda really to convince the audience that this is something that they need. But then again, this is a franchise that people kind of enjoyed, but it's been dormant for so long that I don't really remember.
Came out in
where it can
2010.
go. 2010, yeah.
Yeah, was the first game.
I had-
almost a decade ago.
I had a lot of beef with that game. It also came out, 2010 was one of the best years of video games. So it's like harder. But I had this issue where I would get into that sort of hub area that they had, and then I would try to leave it, and it would tell me I was signed out of my profile, and then I would try to sign back in, and I couldn't. So I just encountered a bug. I restarted the game. That was like 10 hours in, and the same thing happened. So
Did it make you angry?
It made me rage, Brent. It made me rage. But I do think if you combine Rage with Mad Max, both games that I think are fine, and you put them together, there's something really cool there.
Totally,
And I
yeah.
think the color does help. I don't know what this is going to look like in the game, but I think having it less yellowy wasteland and more like crazy punk, I think is cool. So there's definitely a concept there that we haven't really seen in games before that they can, and there are other really good games they can learn from.
Well, we were like knee deep in the sepia in 2010. That was every game had that sort of like burnt paper look to everything, And so I think it's getting better now, which is good. I think people are celebrating color a lot more in video games. And so if that's something that this game can do, then great. But yeah, like I said, it's been so long since we played this game that I think a lot of people either don't have nostalgia for it or they forget what they liked or didn't like. So introducing it to a whole new generation, a whole new audience who probably never played the original version, there's a lot that it can do that's that's brand new here.
I saw some people excited about it, which was weird to me because I remember it as a totally forgettable game.
Yes.
But I think the overall consensus is that the gunplay was really satisfying, which is a good foundation, I suppose.
It was also the enemies, the way they jumped around environments was fun. Like they would come from a ceiling or come from around a corner. So it felt like an arcade shooter almost. And that was a lot of fun.
We just need a better story and a better
is this footage of Rage?
This is footage. If you're watching the video version of the show, we are looking at the original Rage.
Look at that utter lack of color.
Yeah, it was a very grim game.
Yeah,
I don't know that like
remember
splashing
being
pink all over everything is the way to go.
Right.
It does feel really mismatched in a way. I mean, who knows? We've only seen like a small fraction of what it's going to look like.
And speaking of, we were saying if they're marrying sort of Mad Max with the Rage world, that will work really well. They're doing that behind the scenes because Avalanche Studios is working on this game with id Software, and Avalanche did the Mad Max video game.
Which I think is really cool. The one thing that I really wanted to happen that this makes me now think there won't be a Mad Max game is a Mad Max game with the Nemesis system.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't imagine they can license that because it's WB that has it, but man, that'd be cool. Like that being in Rage would be awesome as well because if it's Mad Max style, they have these warlords that should be built up, but it sucks that they're probably not going to get Mad Max 2 now.
A lot of people's biggest exposure to Rage was through Breaking Bad, weirdly enough.
Yeah.
This was like, there was an episode where it cut to Jesse, who was high on meth, hanging out in his like weird
But he was
meth
playing
house.
it with
the light gun.
A light gun.
Light gun. Yeah.
And
so funny.
there was also a mobile game at the time. I forget exactly what the subtitle was, like Rage Anarchy or something like that.
Yeah.
So they tried to push it out to be this bigger universe, and I think it sold well, but wasn't really fondly remembered, it seems, for the large part. But
yeah, I think it was the open world was pretty absent. You could drive between things, but there wasn't a lot to do aside from some jumps. And the driving was a little weird, and the story tried but wasn't quite there.
Yeah.
I think if they have a better narrative, then it'll be.
The timing is interesting too because Bethesda stated recently that their press conference was going to be very long.
Yeah. Possibly their longest.
Possibly their longest. And so if you look at their portfolio, Rage 2 is probably not the sequel that everyone was hoping for the most, but there's a chance that those still could be coming because they're getting this out of the way right now.
Well, I remember with the Fallout one, they announced Fallout 4, they had the trailer, and then most of their press conference was how Fallout works, which I loved. I don't think Rage 2 will be that game. Now, they've said that they're not, it's not an Elder Scrolls game that they're working on this year or something like that.
Right.
Or it's not like the Elder Scrolls
That's
6.
like not what their next. Yeah, I think they've been talking about how they're not looking at the Elder Scrolls 6 as like their next big thing.
So, and someone in the office like floated this as like a dumb theory. What if it's just called Skyrim 2 and that's how they get around it not being the Elder Scrolls 6?
Well, I love that, and I think it makes the most sense because we actually decided to like look on Google and see what makes sense. And Skyrim is such a bigger term than the Elder Scrolls.
There
Like
would
by
be people who've
60
played
times.
Skyrim who don't even Skyrim who don't even know what the Elder Scrolls is.
Yeah.
Like they'd be like, "What is the Elder Scrolls? What is this?" Like, being Skyrim 2 would make sense if it's a really long conference having an hour of Skyrim. Like,
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
otherwise, they're probably not making a new Wolfenstein yet. I don't imagine
this
there's a new
close.
Dishonored.
Doom.
Could be time for a new Doom. That would make sense.
Well, and that's why I have some faith in, at least my curiosity is piqued with Rage 2 because Bethesda has been really good recently at taking stuff like Doom and Wolfenstein that has sort of been dormant for a while and making interesting twists and revitalizations.
Well, one of the things
those
with
franchises.
Rage 2 was in the marketing images they showed, a lot of it they had like Big Ben and other things that seemed like it might be in London.
Yeah.
Which sounds cool.
There's been some like cabs that the weird Mad Maxian men were trying to get into.
Yeah.
Didn't
Which
really
fits
fit.
in line with the whole like punk setting since it's such a big sub-community there.
Yeah.
Question.
Yes.
How likely do you think it is that Rage 2 is a shared world shooter?
Likely.
It's not a very Bethesda thing to do.
Yeah. Or has a battle royale mode
Yeah.
being worked on.
But that's also not a Bethesda thing to do.
It
Or it's
isn't.
just like Borderlands, but done by them in their
Yeah.
style. Because it does seem kind of like the whole like gritty outfits and like in this dusty post-apocalyptic kind of setting.
While still
It
being
seemed
kind of
kinda
fun
like
and
that.
goofy. Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally.
exactly.
Yeah.
I feel like
Totally.
it should have some kind of co-op, but we'll
But
see.
I would be surprised if it is a solely single player open world first person shooter. again sort of thing. Like I think there will be a multiplayer component of some type. I don't know what it is.
I would love like grouping up with other people in the style of Borderlands at the very least to have like 3 other co-op players.
Have a small squad
tackling.
going around.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially if you get to have your own car and maybe do something with it and be able to have a crew basically on that sort of caravan.
Yeah.
I see that being a really fun thing. But we'll find out more. I assume you have seen more if you're listening or watching this. So I hope it looked cool. I hope it was good.
Speculation's going to suck for people listening to this tomorrow.
Luckily, things we can speculate on that people won't know about yet is what is exactly going to be shown at Sony's E3 press conference. Recently, Sean Layden of Sony Interactive Entertainment said that they are going to highlight 4 games at the PlayStation Showcase, and that's The Last of Us Part 2, Death Stranding. I'm trying to do it from memory and not look at my page because I'm very good at this. Ghost of Tsushima.
And Spider-Man.
Yes, thank you. Spider-Man's coming so soon, I always keep forgetting that is the thing that they're going to show, like, for a big part of the conference.
I kind of hope they start with it.
Yeah, I have a feeling it'll be the starting game. But
it's that or Last of Us.
yeah. But so those 4 games are going to be the highlight of the showcase, in addition to some third-party announcements they've implied are going to be there as well, but there won't be new hardware, so PSVR 2 or a PlayStation 5 as well.
No new controllers for PSVR, which I've been asking for such a long time.
Yeah, that won't
Vita.
be...
No Vita.
I had to throw it in there.
Vita 2 will be at
R.I.P.
PSX 2018.
Yeah.
So none of that, but those 4 games will be highlighted, and we assume they'll do some big deep dives on them and not just a quick trailer.
They call The Last of Us Part 2 their centerpiece.
Yes.
So, we'll probably actually finally see someone playing it on stage this time,
Yeah.
which is exciting. The one thing that gets me about this is they mention third party, they mention some indie games, but this makes it sound like there are no new first-party exclusives being announced.
Yeah, in a way, it sounded like they were almost prefacing, like they announced it in that way. There are 4 big games as a way to like preface and offshoot people potentially saying like, oh, wait, there are no new games. You only have stuff we've seen before.
Which is interesting. It feels like something that Nintendo's been doing a lot recently, where they're just sort of like, hey, the Switch won't be at E3, or E3 is only about Mario, or like Gamescom is only about this. Like they're kind of setting expectations going in.
I think it's a good idea.
That said, it's never enough to stop us from speculating.
Oh, yeah.
And
We'll still
hoping
always ask
and
for
wishing
more.
for more.
But it's also, I totally want to see these 4 games. So
Yeah,
it's like,
totally.
I'm
We,
super on
we've
board.
gotten one CG trailer for Ghost of Tsushima.
We don't even know what that game is.
Yeah, we have
Yeah.
no idea how it's going to play. I hope it's just another.
Yeah, if they're deep
cool
dives, like
game.
that would be amazing to see them actually play it on screen if that's
Yeah.
what they're going to do. Or if this is just a play to own their own narrative, then,
I mean, the same
appropriately call them
to-
out after the fact.
Yeah, to Death Stranding as well is like we obviously want to see gameplay and no more short film. I mean, I want to see more of those short
I will
films
happily
also,
take
but
another of those a year.
They could
Yeah.
show me every year and I'd be like, yeah, more of
Keep going.
that.
Even after the game comes out, I still want there to be those short films.
Totally.
Set in that
Just
world.
keep making them forever.
Yes,
It's great.
yeah, that's cool.
It's like a weird Pixar short animated.
yes,
kind
with
of version.
babies that disappear. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that's enough to make us all excited. But the question, I think Barrett might have written this in the document.
Thanks, Barrett.
Does that mean that we won't have any more first-party exclusives from PlayStation this generation?
So I was doing the math and looking at sort of the lineup of first-party studios, and I would think probably not. Like, we know pretty much what every studio is working on for the most part, or is likely working on. Like, we can assume Polyphony will work on Gran Turismo in perpetuity forever, so long as they live. Whereas something like Guerrilla, we can assume is probably working on Horizon 2. Is that a game for this generation? I don't know. It's probably next gen. But in general, most of the studios, like Ben still has Days Gone coming. There's still Dreams coming. So there are still a lot of
probably
games.
working on another God of War already.
Yeah, that pre-pro for God of War
Yeah.
6/2, whatever.
Another one is Wild.
Yes.
Michelle Ansel's game.
Yeah.
That we haven't heard of since 2015.
Yeah, it's been a while.
I mean, I don't even know where that would be, but that could end up being
I feel
a new
like
generation.
it's going to be a while before we see something brand new from the Horizon guys too.
For
think
sure.
so as well.
Yeah.
So-
And whereas most of the other studios either just release something or are working on things to be released, and there have even been, there's that game Concrete Genie, which they showed off at PSX,
Yep.
which is a PlayStation 4 exclusive sort of thing, but they highlighted it there, but really haven't promoted it in a way at like an E3 yet. So I could see that very much being
Yeah.
another sort of like secondary showpiece sort of game. But do you guys think this is like the end of Sony first party games, like this list for the gen?
I mean, I don't know because I don't know how long this generation's going to go. It doesn't feel like it needs to stop anytime soon.
I know.
Like I know it's been 5 years, but I could easily go another 5 with this hardware.
I feel like I'd be kind of annoyed getting an announcement that I have to buy new hardware.
Same.
I don't feel ready for it. And I
Same.
guess that's probably because of the PS Pro, like
Yep.
the way that came out. And with PSVR, they've had hardware releases like staggered. So I think, if next year they're like, you have to buy a new $500 thing to play these games, they'd be like, but I'm not ready to do that yet.
Yeah, and I don't think a lot of the audience is. I mean, the PlayStation 4 sold millions last year and will again this year, and especially this fall with Spider-Man and everything else, Red Dead being there. Like this, it's going to sell a lot of units, and to tell those people to turn around and buy something new in 2 years is probably not a good look. But also, yeah, if we're mapping out what all the sort of like first and second party studios are working on, kind of seems like everything's a known quantity. So, I mean, always hope for surprises, right? But
yeah.
That said, like these are 4 gigantic games still
Yes.
coming, and I don't think all of them will be here this year, maybe even next. I still don't really think we're going to see Death Stranding until like 2020.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I think Death Stranding and probably Last of Us are 2020 likely games, especially because if you look at the pattern they did with a lot of games coming out this year, they very much teased them back in 2016 or so. And so
that
it'd be
would make
about a 2 year.
sense if that means that the year that we get new consoles is 2021.
Yes.
I feel like that's okay.
Yeah. That just feels so far away.
I know.
I'm
but
actually
it's
just
not
what
that
you
far
want.
away.
Yeah.
But it does
really
make
not.
sense because the PS4 Pro was like this interim console. It's like
Yeah.
a 0.5 upgrade. So it feels like it would make sense that it would be the case.
And I always associate new hardware with such a jump.
Yeah.
But right now I don't feel like I need that jump or that they could necessarily do that jump for an affordable
Well,
price.
that's the thing is we never want consoles to hold games back.
Yes.
And that is sometimes the case. But because of the PS Pro, I feel like that's not quite happening.
Right.
And I haven't had many conversations with developers who've said things like, oh, it's frustrating, this hardware, I can't make this game work.
Right.
I don't feel like we're necessarily at that point yet. I mean, we keep getting games every year that look more beautiful than the last. God of War looks absolutely incredible. That just came out.
I was going to say, I don't know how you could play through God of War on a PS4 Pro on a 4K TV and be like, man, this is really, their vision's really being held back.
yeah.
Or
I
same with,
played
like,
it
Give me
on
the
Horizon,
PS5.
right?
a launch PS4 with my 1080 TV and was still like, whoa.
It's stunning. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a stunning video game. I think from this list, Ghost of Tsushima is like the one that I'm sort of the most fascinated in because it's the one we know the least about.
Yes. Yeah.
I moderated their panel at PSX, and we didn't. It was kind of disappointing for the audience because we were basically going through a lot of stuff we knew already because they're holding back for the big reveal at E3. But from what we did see is they did. There's a lot of sort of attention to detail on the era in Japan where this is taking place. They mocapped horses. They have a history of making awesome open world games where movement is very important. So I want to see what this turns out to be. I want to see how much they lean into the sort of the lore side of things. If you look at a game like Neo, which is really fun and really awesome, and if you beat Bloodborne and you want something else like it, go play that. It was like based, in sort of feudal Japan historically, but also it had like weird nonsense monsters and just like giant demon creatures and stuff. And so I wonder how much of the sort of fantasy element they'll get away with in this game.
Do we know about that? Like, how
Not
realistic
really.
is it?
Well, they said that they're like making their own story,
Yeah.
but effectively it's going to be based on a lot of history. So weirdly, we know enough about it just from the setting because it's based on like real events.
Well, there was that famous moment from E3 with Kaz Hirai. Remember, he was hosting that E3 thing for PlayStation, and they were talking about that game Genji 2, or 2 or 3, and they're like, oh, all the battles are based on real world like feudal Japan. So here's this massive enemy crab,
Giant enemy crab.
the giant enemy. It turned into like this whole meme. So if we get a sequel to that this year, I'll be very happy.
That was like the first PS3 E3 press conference, where I think also like there was a Ridge Racer meme.
It's
or
Ridge
something like that.
Racer,
Yep.
Ridge Racer.
Yeah, that conference was not great for the PlayStation, but great for the internet.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was a really good year. But Tina, Alana, what game are you guys most excited to see from this list of 4?
Oh man, it's hard. The Last of Us Part 2, you don't even need to show me that game. You just give me a release date and I'll buy it, And I think most people feel that way. I almost don't want to see more in a way that I'm like, but I'm so excited already. What if I don't have any idea what I'm getting into? Ghost of Tsushima, I'm very curious about, and I mean, Death Stranding, I'm kind of the same. Just give me whatever. But Spider-Man specifically, I love Spider-Man. I love that universe, but I also just really like that kind of action game.
Yeah.
And I want to see that combat. I want to see more of that. I want to see less of it in the way that's like QTE or cinematics based. I want to see a scene that's like the Arkham Predator challenges, like Spider-Man stealthily taking out enemies and see all the weird stuff and environmental attacks he can do. Like that's the one that I really want to see, especially because it's so close.
They really emphasize that he is a scientist and is creating all these things for him. So I'd love to see the extent of that in the game. I'd be really excited about combat.
I'm with you on The Last of Us 2 in the sense of like, I'm going to play it. There's no denying that. But at the same time, I'm really curious where they're going to take it because it felt like such a good, like self-contained experience, the first game, that like, where are you going to go with it now? now to make it still seem like that next step ahead. So I am really curious about that. But I think Ghost of Tsushima, honestly, for me, because I like there's nothing that we really know about it, but I like love the idea of this cultural meld, because that's essentially what they were teasing of, like, this is Mongol invasion, and there's some like adaptations that are going on both sides, and I'm just a sucker for stuff like that.
Right.
So like I just want to, yeah, exactly, yeah. Unintended but awesome.
And it looks so different to their other games as well. That it's just like, what are you gonna do? Am I gonna be a superhero samurai? Because cool,
That works
I
for me.
do it. I don't care.
I'm wondering what the tone is, because even though Infamous does get serious, like I do think of a much lighter tone for most of their games.
Totally.
This one feels so serious. I mean, it's this like it's examining like the culture of the samurai, and it's examining like this Korean background as well.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be like such a cool way of looking at those two cultures and through the lens of this game and how it actually comes to play in the gameplay too. So I think there was that like tiny little clip at the end of the trailer where like the last samurai standing takes like effectively a grenade or something, and that's like based in history. So it's this cool thing that actually happened that they're using as like this gameplay moment too, and then he like stabs the guy.
It feels like it's trying to be reverent to the material of the real world that it's adapting.
Yeah.
I doubt you're very much going to have like a buddy on missions who's drinking beers on a couch and tells you, maybe you should go investigate that plot of land and see what happens. Yeah.
What if we check this out?
Hey, how
Just
are you
becomes a Far
lighting
Cry
those?
NPC.
Just says bruh every time.
Sending you on random side quests. My wife lost her amulet. Like no one cares.
Oh no, I don't want that.
The Last of Us 2, I'm tremendously interested to see where they take that emotionally. I've been less engaged with the teaser stuff that they've shown that's basically just been like torture snuff porn. Because the last one they showed us, I was like, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I understand that this is a grim, dark world. You guys got that message across in the first game, across that 20
It's the thing
hours.
that like it sucks that people are going to be mad at you for saying that.
I don't care.
Because, no, but that's the thing that I feel like we've tried to articulate a bunch of times that we're not doing a great job of articulating it. In that I totally agree. In the trailers we've seen so far, don't sell me on a concept I already knew that game would have. Like I already know it's violent, and I'm like, this is like I know that, and I'm interested in that, and I'm down for that. I like things that are dark, but like I would prefer for you to sell me on something else. Like show me what else it has. And
I want to know.
It's hard to explain.
I want to know where Ellie is emotionally. I care about that more than when I think about The Last of Us. I think about her. I think about her arc through that game, her story. I think about Joel being manipulative. Those are the things that resonate with me more than I think about stabbing a cauliflower guy in the head with a shiv. That's that's fun. I had a great time doing that. But in terms of like why that game stuck with me, it wasn't. Although violence was a big part of it, it wasn't really that so much. It wasn't really the side characters so much. It wasn't really the world building as much as it was.
The relationship between Joel and Ellie.
Yeah, it was that core relationship. And to revisit that core relationship, which as you said, Tina, felt so like perfectly buttoned up. They have to have a really good narrative reason, and I'm sure they do.
I trust them.
I trust them. And that's what I want to see more than anything.
I also want to see that dog.
Yes.
dog.
Oh God, yeah.
Yes.
I trust them very much so on that, but I do agree with you in terms of that last trailer. It sort of opened up what the theories are for what this game is, which I liked, but I don't know if that was necessarily the best way to convey how that ties into this core story, which for me too is what matters to me. It's the moment of Joel at the beginning, the prequel of the game before the title drops. It's the end last conversation they have with each other. Like it's these moments with Joel and Ellie that matter so much to me. And these new characters may be super important. Like there are theories right now that it may be Godfather Part 2-esque prequel and sequel sort of thing. Yeah. Which could be really cool to explore.
Yeah, because there were theories that the person in that trailer was Ellie's mom.
Yes, and they've kept her name quiet.
Yeah.
And she's played by Laura Bailey, so she's probably somewhat of an important character in that game, I would assume. But so far they've kept how this really evolves the story of Joel and Ellie off of the trailers they've shown and more just discuss that in panels and things. And I really am hoping this centerpiece, it'll probably show off a cool sort of sneaking gameplay stuff in there, but I really want to see how this hammers that relationship.
Yeah.
It's kind of like The Walking Dead, how, in the first season, you're like following like the father trajectory, and then afterwards you switch over to Clementine because people like were far more interested in that storyline.
Yes.
And in her development, because you're this young kid and you're experiencing all of these traumatic things, and you have the impact of that like father role on you. So like, that's what
feels
people
like
wanna see,
they
I think.
kind of did something similar to that with Left Behind, though. So it's like this time, from what we can tell, Ellie's really angry. Like she's mad, and this is her almost being a different person, like a different character. I wonder if we'll even play as her. Like it's really hard to say. Or is she like the antagonist, like a prototype 2 situation? If you care about 7 out of 10 average video games. I'm very invested in that franchise. But it could be like, you swap and play someone who's fighting against him. I have no idea. But again, I'm going to play it no matter what. So I'm not like burning to have these answers. I'm like, I just want to play the thing.
Oh, yeah. And I don't expect them to be like, well, this is how the story works throughout the whole game.
Yeah.
But I do hope that centerpiece, I think it's important what they show, that it conveys effectively why we as fans of that story should really care about the second one.
I think the most important thing that can come out of The Last of Us at E3 is the release date.
Yeah.
Like knowing specifically this is when we're playing it, and not having this sort of nebulous understanding that's in development, and just knowing concrete example, we are going to be playing it on this day. I think that's the best thing we can
I
ask.
don't think we'll get that.
I don't think so
I
either.
don't think so.
I was going to ask, do you think we'll get release dates for any of those 3 games?
Spider-Man, we might.
Aside from Spider-Man, the other 3 I meant, because I think...
I hope so.
I am thinking
no.
these days that
I'm a
Death
negative
Stranding is
person.
not as far away as we think it is.
Yeah.
I think we had a theory that it was forever away because they showed off parts of it before they had an engine naturally weird. But, I know 2 people who've played over an hour of it. So it exists.
One of them, I assume, is Kojima, I would guess.
I haven't asked him.
You haven't?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I think Mark Sony spoke about having played a bunch of it. The other 2 are 2 prolific devs at different Sony studios. And
Guillermo del Toro has said he was
Del
showing
Toro.
gameplay.
Oh, yeah, he did,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe that we could get a release date. Maybe it's not as far away as we think.
So we know the game is at least an hour long.
Yes.
Can
Just
confirm.
good
Yes.
news.
Yeah. I think we'll get release years. I think they'll do what they've been doing in recent E3 press conferences and show
I think you're probably right.
years on the screen, and then we'll have to deal with those years again next year, and then maybe get dates in 2020.
Yeah, you can also just say fall 2019 and then just delay it.
So what if we get? Well, what
always
what is
happens.
coming out next year then? Of these games, what's coming out next year?
I would say Ghost is coming out next year.
You think so?
Yes.
Having seen one trailer,
I think they're just keeping it secret. I mean, they've been working on this game for what 5 years now?
Yeah.
4 years?
Yeah, their PS4
I guess if they
Infamous has
show
been a
it,
while.
Yeah.
at E3 and then at PSX and then it comes out, that marketing cycle would make sense. Right now, it feels like we know nothing.
We got the Infamous DLC 4 years ago.
Yeah,
5 years ago. It's been a
Sure.
very long time.
Yeah.
So, assuming they've just been working on this nonstop and keeping it a secret, I think of this list, that is the one that's probably closest to coming out. I would say The Last of Us 2 after that.
Yeah.
Aside from Spider-Man, of course, which we'll hopefully be playing.
Hopefully it's not delayed. Hopefully that's not the end of their showcase. It's like, by the way, it's coming out in 2019 now. Sorry. Didn't mean for that.
I think that would be the kind of information you would want to get out now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they've
Don't
been...
announce that at
Yeah,
E3.
you don't want your trailer
Bad
and then
news.
just like, oh, by the way.
Yeah, you can't play this.
Open the conference with it.
I mean, they put out the God of War release date just on the PlayStation blog on like a random day. It wasn't like there was a big lead up to that. That was just a thing they did. So I think the E3 press conferences are becoming less to them a thing of giving you the news of what matters to you and that, and more showing you the games.
They're also really good at aligning with really strong first or third party titles or securing third party titles as exclusives. So I think we'll be spending most of the next year playing stuff like that. And that'll be a good way to sort of like balance out their conference.
So aside from these 4, and the centerpieces and the big 4 or whatever, what else do you guys want to see from Sony's E3? Briefly.
I think we'll see...
We'll have a full episode in about 3 episodes.
So I think one of the things, and it kind of touches on a topic later, I think we'll see a Kingdom Hearts 3 trailer there that gives you the release date. I think even though Square has a press conference-y sort of thing happening, I very much think that is going to be on a first-party stage.
PlayStation would pay for it.
Yeah, PlayStation, it also makes the most sense just of where that franchise has lived for most of its life cycle, so I think we'll get that there.
Yeah.
I guess I want to see like their presence of wacky, weird, cute indie games too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, they're known for that, and it's always a breath of fresh air
They've
to
been
see
doing
like
a
what's
little
hiding.
less indie support lately,
Yeah.
actually. Like since, I don't know, I think it was 2 years ago they had a lot of indie stuff on their stage, and we haven't really seen as much of it lately.
Well, they would do those things where it'd be like there was one year they had devs come out all at once playing their games, like 6 different indie devs, and
Yeah.
like, hey, these are all games coming in the first 4 months of the PS4 or whatever.
Nintendo has.
They do a lot of those like really quick sizzle reels, which
Yes.
Yeah.
just suck because I'm just
Yeah.
like, what is this?
And last year they did a pre-show to the E3 press conference that
that's
had
right.
almost as many announcements as the show itself, and was a lot of where they put the indie games.
I think Paris Games Week had the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they have, like, Nintendo has an indies. Xbox has ID at Xbox. I feel like PlayStation doesn't quite have a version of that.
No, they don't have a brand.
Yeah.
No,
Indies.
I mean they had like the PlayStation Minis for a while there. There's like little games they put on Vita and stuff. But I think for the most part, they probably looked at the bottom line, to be frank, and they said, we are we're kind of bending over backwards to help out all these little studios, and they did, and they got a lot of really great indie games out there. But a lot of those games, they had to basically come in and, save at the last minute and fund and bring to the finish line. And I don't think that that's something that's always financially viable, which sucks. At the end of the day, this is a business, so they have to look at that.
Yeah.
That said, I'm with you. I'd love to see more things like that. I think it's time to sort of bring out whatever wave 3 of PlayStation VR is.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, I think that coupled with some sort of price drop or a bundle or something like that to kind of reinvigorate the sales and the conversation around PSVR. PSVR is really cool. It's had a steady stream of like kind of smaller, interesting games. But in terms of that first wave, which we saw, stuff like Batman in and a lot of support from like Ubisoft, to that second wave, which is a lot of smaller titles and ports from other VR platforms, to right now, we don't really know what's next in terms of like a big sort of library of games coming. So doing that will kind of imbue confidence in people who have purchased it already and inspire people to buy a new one to begin with.
I think where they show PSVR games will be very telling for how much of a priority it is for them for the next year or two, if it's in the pre-show, if it's in the real show.
Usually in the middle of the real show.
Yeah, so I would hope it's still there. But as we saw, like waning Vita support in the shows, and then it kind of just dissipated. So
Speaking of PSVR, do we know what Supermassive's working on right now? They might be the only ones we don't know, which means they could have a VR game.
yeah, that's definitely
The
possible.
last was the Inpatient, which was the Until Dawn
prequel-ish sort
prequel
of thing.
thing.
Yeah,
Which I liked.
yeah.
So maybe they're working on something that could be announced.
Yeah, I could see them definitely. Obviously, Until Dawn was sort of a big surprise for a lot of people, so I'm sure they're trying to keep that franchise going, I would imagine. And VR makes a lot of sense for it because it's spooky.
It's very spooky.
I wonder if they'll do any sort of like victory lap stuff on God of War and Detroit, which will have just, sort of been out there and settled in with people.
I don't expect either of those games to have DLC.
Yeah, what does God of War DLC look like?
I think they said they're not doing any, but
Play
I
as
mean,
the mom.
like by choice, I would be like,
PvP.
you let me go to these other places. That
A
we
battle
have-
royale.
Yeah.
Yeah,
100 axes flying through the air all at once. Good luck, everyone.
that sounds
Yeah.
great.
That's
Yeah.
really good.
Sony
could
contact me
do
if
a
you need help.
swan song to God of War, like some kind of tribute that like fans would love that. Like
Yeah.
even if
Yeah.
it's not an announcement, people would be like, "Woo, I played this! Woo!" Like I could see that maybe happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's sold so well so far, but even if you look at its sales in comparison to how third-party games do, I think they will have definitely a huge presence because most falls for Sony don't have a major first-party game. Like, they've pushed most of their stuff to first, second quarters of the year.
Which is smart.
Because the focus is, hey, the Call of Duties, the Battlefields, the
I wish Bethesda would
Battlefronts.
do that. Like
Yeah.
they release so many good games, but at the wrong time of year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Screwing yourselves over. Come on.
It's working really well for PlayStation. I mean,
Yeah.
if you look at the sales on Horizon, you look at the sales on God of War, like that is a good window to be in. That's sort of like February to May.
I don't think Monster Hunter would have been as successful if it came out later in the year.
I totally
No.
agree.
Same
Resident
thing
Evil
with
7.
Dying Light was
Yeah.
also, Resident Evil also.
Yeah, Dying Light was
yeah.
a February release or something.
Yeah.
And I probably wouldn't have played that game if it hadn't come out that time of year.
One thing they're also targeting for a early year release is Days Gone, though, too, which won't be a centerpiece game, but we assume will have some presence at E3 this year. But we've recently also gotten a lot more information about Days Gone. Almost, I think, at least 2 hours of footage we've gotten thanks to a Game Informer cover reveal, which has given us a really big in-depth look at the game, talks with the developers at Bend. They've talked a bit about what the gameplay actually will look like in terms of as you're fighting freakers. Not zombies, freakers.
Very specific about that.
They're not zombies because they are not undead. They are actual living creatures.
Yeah, they're
with
they're
infection.
alive.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, wait, so they're still so they can be saved?
Well, there's like an organization in the game that's researching, and I think that's like the main like conflict in the game.
Got it.
Is between the protagonist Deacon St. John, which is a weird name, and
It's his
and
dog's
this
name and
organization.
the street he lived on as a kid. The creator director, Deacon St.
Isn't that how you
That's
come up with
awesome.
your porn star name?
Deacon St. John?
Yep. Well, John Garvin, the creative director, also did say like zombie fatigue is something that we've dealt with from the very beginning. It's not like any zombie game you've ever played is what he's hoping this will be set apart. And a lot of the gameplay shows a lot more of sort of the open world of this, that there's more of a focus on your motorcycle gameplay. Like that is a big aspect of this as Deacon and his... Does the bike have a name?
No,
Does
the
anyone
bike,
know?
I think he said the bike does not have a name.
Okay.
It needs to have a name.
A lot of people do name their bikes though.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's a thing.
Yeah. You can probably maybe personalize it. That's the
Well, you can
whole-
upgrade and customize it
Yes.
in the
Yes.
game.
Yeah,
Hello Kitty
We do. I
stickers.
did actually put a little list on here that it's
Yeah, so there's a
chat.
Ooh, bike
bunch
chat.
of bike-
We'll get to bike chat in a second then. But some of the details that have come out include that it has around a golden path of a 30-hour story, but it'll likely take a lot more because there's danger in the world that you're exploring.
Yeah, this is the
constantly.
thing Garvin said is that he wants this game to feel like you are constantly in danger, that
Yes.
you don't have any any area, maybe except for the camps where you feel safe. And I think that's pretty interesting. Pretty much anything can attack you for any reason.
Well, and they've said there's actually no difficulty settings in the game. It is just one setting because they were like, if we made it easier, it would feel like we were giving you things too easily in the game. You would just have so many resources and get through these enemies so quickly. It seems to them they want it to be a hard game and to challenge you. But
I think it's the difference between like, because there's so many ways you can take the zombie theme. You can do like the Walking Dead slow walkers style, or you can do the 28 days later, like the ones that are like chasing after
Right.
you. So it's kind of like Dying Light, where they're actually a force to be reckoned with, especially when they're grouped up. And it's that same idea where there's a horde and you're supposed to be really afraid of approaching them. So it's supposed to be a more like stealth oriented thing, which I love stealth games. So I personally like, I'm okay with the zombie fatigue thing.
There's also definitely a lot of human combat.
yes.
I mean, he said, and I watched all of Game Informer's coverage that's up so far, and Garvin said, like the final fight is going to be against another human, apparently. And I think they said that's maybe subject to change, but that's how it's planned right now. And parts of the first hour of gameplay is a lot of human conflict more so than anything else. So I imagine it's more about humanity than it is about the freakers, as they call them.
And there's some gameplay in there that's like light choice stuff. You can decide to give one of your friends like a shotgun or take it with you, which then
Or shoot someone in the face, or
do
leave
that.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah, they said there were like 3 subplots that are basically that golden path at like one main storyline. And I think one of them was your relationship with Boozer, your like fellow biker gang person. And the way that you interact with him depends, like affects what your relationship is like and affects how he views you through the rest of the game.
Yeah.
So that's some of that like decision making stuff.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see this. So they showed the first full hour and then like another 45 minutes of gameplay or so and some little things here and there. I'm very curious to see how those things play in the long term of the game because over the first hour, it sort of feels like I'm not surprised by what it showed me, both in the gameplay or the choices you get to make, but I could see those playing out in this world, which they seem to have put a lot of resources into making it dynamic and giving you like encounters that could really screw you over if you're
They
not
talk about
prepared.
the weather dynamics a lot. I expect the bike probably controls differently with different weather.
I think apparently the freakers also behave differently depending on what the weather is like.
Interesting.
That's what I read.
They use umbrellas.
like in GTA, they just pull out.
They don't come
umbrellas
out of their
and
houses.
They
They're like,
skip
oh, it's
through
raining
puddles.
out.
They make snow angels. Yeah, this is I think people have been sort of apprehensive about this game and possibly a little lukewarm. I'm still pretty hopeful for it because I think the environment to me is the interesting thing. I really like.
It's set in Washington. I think it's set in Oregon.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
So
the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, I really like. I just like this wood setting is really interesting. In terms of like the camps, we're hearing more and more about the gameplay that's starting to sound more and more like a lot of the stuff in Far Cry that I like.
Yeah, so Garvin actually said in one of the interviews, someone asked on a scale of 1 to 5, how much is it like Far Cry? And he said 4.5. And then they said, how much is it like Primal? And he said 0.5. So it sounds like it's supposed to be a lot more like Far Cry than The Last of Us. And one of the notes that I put here is that he's been getting very annoyed with The Last of Us comparisons or getting sick of them. One of the Game Informer guys just said, are you getting sick of Last of Us comparisons? And he said, yes. And
then he asked him if it's a little bit like it, and he said no, except that it's a third-person action-adventure game where you're killing creatures that aren't zombies.
Yeah.
Which, watching the gameplay, I didn't really think of Last of Us besides like a general outdoor aesthetic with a
It's so
gun.
cinematic, though.
Yeah, it totally does. For me, the thing that surprised me about the gameplay was I kept thinking of Breath of the Wild. In terms of like the little things in there, like there is weapon degradation. It looked like, at least with some of the physical, like a bat or something, only had a limited number of hits on it.
Right.
You have to keep track of certain resources. He has a stamina bar. And just so some of the ways that they were implying that you would work and interact with the environment made me think more of Breath of the Wild. I think it will be much more story focused.
Yeah,
I
I think
it's kind of like Far Cry because of the encampments. Like that's
Yeah.
specifically
Yes.
what we were talking about. So it is different gameplay wise, but some of those themes are similar to The Last of Us. Like the idea that there's a conflict between people who are trying to seek out a cure and people who are just trying to survive.
Yeah.
So it's definitely thematically kind of similar.
Yeah,
it's a gruff guy with a beard killing zombies in a PlayStation exclusive game. So obviously people are making that association. I don't fault them for that. That said, I think it's giving The Last of Us a lot of credit for being this wildly original thing when it's effectively Cormac McCarthy's The Road meets The Walking Dead, which
Yes.
was on TV 3 years before The Last of Us came out.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, we are on, I don't know if we're in zombie fatigue. I know there's a lot of Walking Dead fatigue.
And open world fatigue.
And open world fatigue, maybe. Yeah, I think there's enough of that too. But that said, yeah, this game does have to sort of separate itself from its predecessors and convince people that it's doing something new and original. Or maybe it just needs to bring together a bunch of familiar systems and make something really fun. And I'm cool with that too.
Similar to what God of War did.
Yeah, the one thing that confuses me a little is that, again, in that same interview, Game Informer asked, is this a bummer game? And they said, no, it's an awesome game. But a lot of the things that we see,
Rad.
and they're like comparing it to Far Cry instead of to The Last of Us, but a lot of the things we see, and I watched, that almost that entire first hour of gameplay, it is really serious.
Yes.
And I kind of feel like it could end up being at odds with itself, where it's like, well, we want the dialogue to be serious. We have this main character who seems to be dealing with some kind of PTSD, but at the same time, we want it to be fun and about motorbikes and killing zombies. And it's like, which of these is this? And like, how are you going to balance that?
And there's
I'm not
zombie
sure about
bears that you can light on fire, stuff like
Yeah.
that. I mean, we're fresh off of Far Cry 5, which I think we all really liked. I had a really good time playing that game. It was completely sort of tonally inconsistent, I think. And I got over that pretty quickly. I was able to just enjoy it for what it was. But there was a lot of stuff in there that felt very serious, including the opening 10 minutes, which set me to believe that this is going to be like one of the most disturbing open world games I've ever played, totally serious, and we gotta fight the bad guys and all this stuff. And it just turned out to be pretty goofy, which is okay.
Just what you want from Far Cry, pretty much.
Exactly.
Give me goofy.
Yeah, I was actually almost bummed out that it almost brought me down this different path where I was like, oh, this is too serious. It is taking itself too serious. So ultimately, it was a good time. I hope this game can balance that. That's not an easy thing to balance.
I feel like it's going to be super serious all the way through, like the whole PTSD thing. You're playing through flashbacks at certain points, so I think you're going to see like how this infection came about and how it affected Deacon and that kind of interaction between the two of those elements. But I don't know, when you think about zombie bear, it's like, oh, haha, that's really funny. But think about a zombie bear actually right here. I'd be terrified.
Yeah. No,
right?
How did it get in the studio? Would be my first question. But no, yeah.
How did he get up the elevator?
It's a very smart zombie bear.
I hope they weave the story in. The way story gets kind of woven into open world games gets difficult. Bringing up Far Cry again, they quite literally yanked you out of whatever you were doing in that game, which I thought was incredibly jarring and just kind of like a poor way to trickle that narrative out. You'd be running around in that game and all of a sudden you'd get shot and dragged out of whatever fun you were having to get forced into the story beat again. And so hearing about like the playable flashback sections and stuff like that, I hope that works. I hope you have to sort of actively seek those out, and those aren't things that just happen randomly that take you out of, like, if I'm trying to take down a big camp and I got my whole plan down and all of a sudden you're like, hey, it's story time, and you pull me out, like, that's going to suck. So I hope there's a cool way where all of that kind of brings itself together.
It's a hard thing for games to balance.
It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, in terms of that quick note, Days Gone and almost all these Sony games feel like they have a new benchmark for me to hit because of God of War, where all of the side stuff feels important to what you're doing in the main stuff or into just your general understanding of that world.
Yeah.
And so I really want to see some cohesiveness with this, especially a world like this, where they're really trying to flesh out and encourage you to explore.
I've talked about this before, but I think what worked so well within God of War was that the urgency of that story wasn't. It was that you're bringing your wife or your mother's ashes to the top of a mountain, and
It's one really long side quest.
Yeah, she's already
much.
she's already dead. Like, it's not like nothing you can do can speed that up or slow that down. It's like these ashes aren't getting expired. Like, they're just ashes. So for them, it was sort of like, we can take our time. We can talk to this head. We can roll the boat around a lot. Depending on the urgency of this game, it'll sort of exude how much I want to get in and do a bunch of side stuff. Like, I always bring up like Breath of the Wild. Zelda in general is sort of like, save the princess. And you're like, yeah, but I got to collect like 100 skulls and like 200 bees.
But I got this poop, though.
What about these turds?
Totally a thing. I mean, that is a really good point, that sometimes they can like completely just be at odds with each other. And that is a really hard thing to do. But that said, watching a lot of the open world stuff, I think I'm more interested in Days Gone now than I was. I think that maybe they've marketed it a little bit wrong. That like the fact that we have to clarify and be like, no, this is more like Far Cry, is like we're having to do that for them. It's a little bit odd. The one thing I'm concerned about now is I think some of the writing is a little over the top. Some of the parts that I've seen with Deacon where he's like, I messed up, man. It just like seems like it's like trying really hard to have this like gritty character that I'm a little bit worried it's going to get cheesy. But that's just me being concerned about the first hour. A lot of it feels expositional, but that is the first hour of a game. So sometimes they do that. That's just the one thing that I'm like, not sure about that.
Yeah, I think it has a lot of convincing to do to people, in general. I think it had a bad first impression because it had two first impressions. And right off the bat, when they ended their press conference with that game,
so we were all expecting it to be Red Dead.
Yeah. Well,
everyone was expecting Red Dead too.
And so that sucks for that
Days
game because it's like, it's really interesting looking. It's gorgeous. It's got a lot of great ideas, a lot of cool things going on. But we saw it. And then it went away for 25 minutes. And then we're like, here we go, something else. And then it came back again. We're like, so we almost got fatigued. Even though we didn't know it was a thing 30 minutes earlier, we're already tired of it, which kind of sucks for that game. And then it's appeared at a couple different things since, and we haven't really had a definitive example of when we'll be playing it or what exactly it is and how it's separating itself from everything else. So the more we learn, the more I'm interested in it, and I want to know when I'm playing it and what it's doing that's fresh and new and fun.
Which is a really good sign, too, for that game. I mean, it's the opposite for trailers for movies and whatnot, where the more you see of it, it's obvious that, the less confidence there is in that movie, and they're just trying to show you all these parts to get you excited. But for Days Gone, I think it's the problem of people just chalked it up to, another zombie game, whatever. Yeah. Who cares? And it's the narrative is it's just the fatigue. But the more that we see from it, we do see that it's doing some interesting things. It does seem like a tough kind of game. Maybe there's interesting dynamic between those
Mm-hmm.
characters too. Who knows?
I think a really bold gameplay montage trailer set to a good song could sell this game really well.
Yeah. Andrew WK?
Yeah. Andrew
Party time in the Pacific Northwest.
You can recut anything to make it look different.
Yeah.
I always think about one of the first trailers for Batman Begins that made it look like a rom-com. Have you guys seen that?
Oh, no.
It's like, who? What? Who are you trying to trick to see this movie? And then it wasn't at all.
At the very least, we'll probably find out soon. They've been saying they've been targeting early 2019 for it now. And they did say during all this coverage it will come out before The Last of Us Part 2.
Yes.
So The Last of Us Part 2 is not January 2019.
We at least have a window because they said early 2019, so The Last of Us is not early 2019.
Yes.
But we're also not comparing it to that game at all, especially not in the release date department. None whatsoever.
No, we've all decided, we've agreed, we're comparing it to Far Cry.
Far Cry.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yes.
One thing that I thought was really interesting in the coverage that we didn't see any of is that it has big metropolitan areas with up to 800 people.
Do you want to know what that's like? Yeah. As we were saying, I kind of get what the first hour of this game is. I don't know what hour 10 or 15 is like, and especially if they have environments like that. I want to explore that. I want to see how much of a living, breathing world it feels like.
Yeah.
I'm also, and to your point earlier, Brian, I'm also really curious how those three subplots are supposed to weave into each other. Will they pull you out of those moments? Will the PTSD flashbacks pull you out? How are they going to weave in together? Can you go down one path and go down that narrative and then decide I'm bored with that and I want to see what my relationship with Boozer is like instead, which I think they mentioned a little bit about that you could, if you got tired of one storyline, skip to the other one, but that all three feed into each other.
That sounds cool.
In a GTA way, you know how in GTA you can be I'm going to hang out with this Russian dude and now I'm going to hang out with this dude and now I'm just going to hang out with, and you sort of pursue their storylines differently.
You could probably still play darts in this game if you wanted to. Yeah, I'm sure there's one dartboard in the Pacific Northwest at least.
It's just not great.
You want to go bowling?
My cousin Freaka, how are you? But yeah, so we've seen a lot more. It's made me much more excited about the game. We've also seen the bike a lot more. Let's do some quick bike chat. Bike chat. Welcome to Bike Chat, a podcast within a podcast. I'm your host, Bike McDornbush.
Oh, very good.
Wow,
Nice.
not a great name.
No, it's not.
Bike McDornbush?
I blame
like
my
it.
parents.
It's better than
It needs to be the street you grew up on and your dog's name.
Bike McDornbush. Yeah, it's weird. It worked out that way. Let's talk about the bike. So you can upgrade it. You can sort of customize it, it seems, as the game goes on. You can lose it, and then you have to go find it.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
No, neither. I'm a little bit. It does have fast travel, so potentially you can fast travel to where. But is it like a bike, like an icon on the map? You can't recall your bike, and you only have one seemingly.
Well, in that first hour in Game Informer's first hour of the game reveal, I think there was a moment where your bike breaks down and you're trying to find parts for it. So you bring it out into the bush somewhere.
You do have to
hide
consider your
it.
gas.
Yeah.
Also as you're going.
Absolutely.
So it
Which I
seems,
hated in Final Fantasy 15.
yeah.
Like that was the most annoying thing about that game. I was like, oh, I gotta run to get gas now. Cool.
It's
I
like
don't
normal
wanna do
life,
that.
right? Yeah.
No. None of
Just
that.
another day.
Unless
Day
the
is
gas
gone.
stations have like very cool scenarios placed into them.
Right.
I mean,
hope
it's probably a zombie game where there's conveniently gas laying around everywhere.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, I hope that that's the case. But yeah, the upgrades, it seems like that's like a big focus. It legit, from all of this coverage, it seems like the creative director of this game is a dude who just really likes bikes. He's just super into bikes.
cool.
Like they asked him if he liked Ride to Hell Retribution. He was like, it's one of the worst games I've ever played, but I love it. I'm like, all right, noted.
Take that.
Bike stuff's gonna get weird.
If you lose your bike, is there like an app? Is there
Don't
like,
know.
do you have like,
Find my bike.
yeah, like, is there, how do you just go looking through the woods?
At the beginning of the game, your first choice is whether or not you put one of those like tile things on there to
Right.
keep track of it, and if you don't, you have a much harder time.
Hard- that's hard
That's
mode.
the difficulty setting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's
that
all
is
worked
tough.
out. You can also do tricks and stunts with your bike, but no wheelies.
Speaking of trying to maintain the consistency between a serious storyline and
Cool stunts.
goofy, yeah, exactly.
You can't do wheelies, you can't do front flips, but a lot of the side parts, basically the roads were destroyed to stop the zombie hordes in this world. So they were either flooded or destroyed, like bridges were destroyed so they couldn't. So you are on the bikes going off the beaten path, but there's jumps a lot. And it says that you get some kind of points for doing stunts. Which again is a thing that's like, how does this fit into this
What game is
series?
this again?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I feel like that's throwing Tony Hawk into the middle of it, where you're like, I need to go save my beloved from the freakers, and then you do like a Christ air off of your bike and then back onto it.
I hope
and then
there's a
jump.
It becomes
Photo mode.
trials.
Yeah.
Like there is
can you-
no photo mode.
That would be great though.
Yeah,
like
they
you're
said-
just jumping over some freaker's heads. And you know, just
They said
perfect
not,
dress moment.
it's not
you
in
turn
the
around
game
and
yet,
smile.
so maybe it'll end up being in the game.
I
but
feel like almost
DLC.
every first party game these days.
especially PlayStation,
needs-
they're
yeah.
doing it a lot. So.
Yeah, it encourages too like the sociability of those games too. So
Helps
Totally.
them with
Yeah.
marketing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Ooh, that's pretty. My friend tweeted that. I'm gonna play it. Like it's a really good
yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
Do you think you can stand on the bike
Don't know.
I hope so.
and ride? That sounds fun. What percentage of Dead Rising do you think this game's going to get? I think 5 to 10%.
Yeah,
I think it's gonna be a fair amount like Dead Rising. I think saying the first Dead Rising specifically, I think it's probably closer to the first Dead Rising than it's going to be to anything like Last of Us.
Right.
I think it's going to be a lot more like that.
I think it's gonna be more Dying Light with a touch, a sprinkle
Yeah.
of Dead Rising.
'Cause, I mean, Dying Light's story is pretty serious. That's like a government takeover. Like there's a plot twist in there.
And it's supposed to be this really difficult, like, survive this hellish
Yeah.
landscape kind of a game. So in that sense, it's pretty similar.
Yeah.
but you'll always have your trusty bike unless you lose it.
Yeah, I'm concerned about
with
that.
it.
I
Yeah.
feel like they need to flesh that out. Like, are you going to make me walk through the woods to find a bike? Because hell no.
Yeah, that
I'm
won't
not
be
doing
great.
that.
Yeah, I don't want to walk through all of Portland and then end up on another forest and there's no bike there.
Sounds terrible.
They should just make it like God of War where you press a button and it just, flies back.
If that's a
It's like
bug
you
in the
whistle
game,
for
I'd-
your bike and it dutifully
Just
comes
goes 100
over.
miles an hour
Yeah.
backwards
God.
down the road towards you.
Roach.
You have to lasso it to you.
Yeah, and your guy just jumps in the air and lands on it. And he's
Okay,
like, hey.
make this game dumb and silly, please. Yeah. Well, this has been Bike Chat with Bike McDormbush. Thank you. Now back to Beyond. Bike Chat. Yeah, I'm more excited after seeing that look at Days Gone.
Me too.
I hope it gets some presence at E3. I hope we get to play it and see a bit more of what'll happen with it. but
Surely it's playable at E3.
yeah, I would have to imagine.
Yeah. I mean, Game Informed played it, so they were at hands-on preview, so I'm
Yep.
sure that we'll be able to
They've seen at least 2 hours of it.
They built an entire booth at PSX with all the hanging freakers and all
Right.
this and like this haunted house looking
wasn't
thing.
playable.
And it was just trailers running on TV.
weird.
It was like,
Yeah.
all right.
You guys
Thanks,
got a lot of
guys.
space, I
Yeah.
see.
Well, I think it was last year at E3 they did it behind closed doors, kind of like hands-on, not hands-on for the press, but like
Yeah.
they were playing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
one
I
scene
did one of
out.
those. I think actually quite a lot of us did. But that was basically the same thing that we'd seen in the trailer on the stage, so it wasn't a lot. But
Yeah.
we got to be able to play it.
This is the chunkiest that we've seen this game at for sure.
And those freakers are chunky, let me tell you.
No body shame.
No, I'm not. They're
They
all
have
very cool.
sores all over.
That's good. I mean, they're eating a lot.
Yeah, it means they're healthy.
I don't
but
want them to eat. That means us.
yeah. Oh, never mind. All right, back to Bike Chat. Continuing on with the E3 train, just a small sort of little announcement so far that we know of. Square Enix will be having its own pre-recorded stream on Monday, June 11th, starting at 10 a.m. Pacific. We don't know what they're going to show. They haven't really said anything about it, what it will be, what it will entail, how big of a production it will be. What do you all think this will actually be? Will it be like a full press conference? Will it be a just trailer after trailer after trailer? Will there be big announcements? What are you expecting from
Like
this?
Nintendo Direct style, like kind of a bit of both, maybe. As for games,
Well, there's some known quantities, like the game that you played.
Tomb Raider.
Yes.
I want to see more from Nia, but I don't know if that's likely.
I want to see that damn Avengers game.
The Avengers
yeah.
Project.
Yeah.
Project.
Like, yeah, I feel like we've forgotten about it because it was like a 30-second CG, like not even a trailer.
Yeah, and that's all
Yeah.
we've
I
seen of it.
cannot believe they didn't even have like a reminder logo they
Yeah.
could send out to people recently.
Right.
When that small film hit theaters.
Never heard of it.
That would have been a nice time to do that.
Tully?
Yeah.
I mean, when Tully hit theaters? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily expecting, like I said, I think the Kingdom Hearts 3 release date trailer will be during the PlayStation conference, but I still think they'll show more Kingdom Hearts during this.
Yeah,
I do
why
think
not?
we'll see things like that.
That joke got me very good.
I'm happy. One person
What
gets a
else do
Tully
you
joke.
want to
That's
see
all
of
that matters.
Kingdom Hearts?
Just all of it. Yeah, just the
The
whole
whole
thing.
game.
I mean,
12-hour stream and they finished it.
wonderful. No, I am hoping. I don't know the size of how many more worlds we're going to get. There have been sort of like different reports about whether there's one left, whether we've seen all of them. It's 5 more left. Who knows? So
Combat looks so good.
it does, yeah. Like I want to see the variety of the special moves because that seems to be such a big thing this time around. Where really, depending on your Keyblade combination with your team members, it really varies up the combat. So I'd love to see more highlights like that. Plus, just a new world. Just announced Frozen already. We know it's there. It has to be there. Barrett, it's
Isn't
there,
it
right?
just a snowy world?
Yeah, probably.
Isn't that it?
Well, that's what I'm curious. They're doing Tangled, so is Frozen just a reskin with snow of the Tangled world?
Yeah.
Like, it'll just be the outdoors and the hills.
It'd be crazy not to do Frozen, but I don't want that.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't really want that world.
Oh, there's so much more I'd rather them do, but they're very much putting an emphasis on recent Disney.
I get that.
So, yeah. Also, given the recent reports and everything, I don't think we'll see the Final Fantasy VII Remake, since it sounds like that game is starting from scratch.
Yeah, they said that game is going to come out before 2023.
Yeah, so there's this report of like a conversation that was, there's a transcript of a conversation between execs at Square Enix where they were saying they were trying to shoot for the 35th anniversary of Final Fantasy, though apparently that was written off as somewhat of a joke to a certain extent.
Yeah, it was only reported on seemingly by Destructoid, who weren't even then they were like, we're not
Yeah.
really sure about this, but that was the most recent thing.
Yeah,
2023.
yeah. But after,
You can't make that joke at Square and expect it to be a joke.
Well,
Yeah.
because it's believable.
It's believable. They regularly take 10 or 12 years
Yeah.
to finish a
Yeah.
game. That's not funny. That's reality.
well, and
That's
since
okay. Just
they
set
were
the
recently
expectations.
hiring for such big jobs
Yep.
as we've talked about.
Battle System 3.
Yeah, you probably need to do a lot more work on that game, so I don't feel like we'll see that.
You don't even think we'll get hey, like we're still, here it is.
I don't
Still
think that they
working on
should
it.
do that at E3. I think that they should have an announcement that is like, hey, we really started from scratch. This game is 5 years away.
Mm-hmm.
They should announce that so that people aren't annoyed,
Yeah,
basically.
I think a dev in a conference room telling you like, "Hey, here's what's going on."
It's the same with the Resident Evil 2 remake. It's like, guys, where the hell is that?
Yeah, that was such
Come
a
on,
strange.
at
I mean,
least
we
comment
could
on
have
it.
to see that this year.
I think if we don't, I think we will. If we don't, then I'm just giving up on it. It's
Yeah.
like, it's
Yeah.
not coming out. It's done.
That's fair.
It's quit.
Yeah, I just want to know if that's like remake, if it's like Resident Evil 4, if it's like
Did they not say it's a RE2 remake?
no, we know.
Oh, you mean in what style?
Yeah, or
Like
if
if
it's like
it's
Resident
like
Evil 7.
7.
Like
Yeah.
I
there's
see
so
what
many
you
different
mean.
directions it could go. So
I
I'm
kind of hope
interested.
it's like 7.
Me too.
Yeah.
I'd be into that.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll find out.
That probably won't be on the Square Enix stream.
No,
but
probably
yeah,
not.
it'll probably
I wonder who would take. Probably PlayStation.
PlayStation or even Xbox. Depends how hard they're leaning into third parties.
Depends
I feel
who
like-
gives them the most money.
Yeah.
I think it's PlayStation. Probably.
When if like to the average person, I would say Resident Evil 2 is a PlayStation exclusive game to them.
Yes.
You know?
most people
Yeah.
will probably think that.
Yeah, there's a deep association between classic
Even Resident Evil 7, people are like, that's
yeah.
on Xbox. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I get that. It's the same with Kingdom Hearts. That's why I think it makes sense. But it's also, it would be a ballsy power move for Xbox to get it.
Oh yeah,
To get Kingdom Hearts?
Yes.
People would be like, wait, what?
yeah.
Like,
If that's where the release date happens, that would be very surprising.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think it'll be during the stream. Is there anything else you all think might be in the stream?
Square?
Yeah,
There's probably more 15 content.
yeah.
Might even see some new stuff from 14. They're still supporting that. But
Did the mobile version completely come out? Wasn't that like
full version?
episodic?
yeah,
not sure,
I don't
yeah.
know.
Yeah, I went from being
paying
like,
enough
oh cool, they're
attention to
making a
mobile
chibi version of that game to just checking out.
Maybe
Yeah,
it'll finally come to Switch.
Maybe.
mobile version.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I hope we get some Square Switch announcements.
Yeah, that would be very cool.
Yeah.
I could see them padding it out. I think the biggest announcements will still be saved for first party stages.
Yeah.
But I think there's so many streams and things to keep track of now. It just makes covering that show so difficult.
And there's all
we
these
have
fun,
a
but
wiki.
different.
Shout out to our wikis team who put together everything you can expect at E3.
Yep.
Like that's the wiki I'm using to keep track of when all the press conferences are. They have games that are confirmed for E3. So if you want any details on that stuff, check out the IGN E3 wiki.
Yeah, there's all these weird rules for everything we know now. It's like Nintendo's like, everything we're talking about will be released this year. And Sony's like, we're only talking about these 4 games, but not this. And someone else is like, we're only doing this. And it's just like this weird math problem in my head. I'm
Yeah.
like, where would a game go if it was to come out hypothetically this year on PlayStation?
Yeah.
So who knows?
Well, to be fair, Nintendo also said that last year, and then they were like, also Metroid and Pokemon. So
The logos.
yes, whoever knows these days. But yeah,
I love a good logo, though, at E3.
a good,
That-
nice logo. Yeah.
That is the best time to show off your new logo. And nothing
That's
more.
where I'll be debuting the bike
Anything
chat
from
logo.
Valve.
They are making games again.
I know.
Is their line?
We'll save that discussion for our pre-E3 episode, but
Yes.
Yeah.
They were in the news last week, more than I've heard of them being in
Right?
the news
Yeah.
for like years.
they're like, hey,
pretty
we
much.
exist. What's up? We're back.
they're-
Start making hardware for a bit.
Well, especially with the acquisition of Campo Santo and all
Yeah.
of that, I wouldn't be surprised to see another announcement or two like that.
3.
Definitely.
Finally happening.
And it's already
And we
out.
know that's dead.
But yeah, there's a lot more to look forward to for E3. Another new announcement of something coming on the horizon. Just want to quickly touch on. There's a new Superhot that was announced.
Yeah.
Sweet.
So I thought this one was really exciting. Which is
yeah.
why I wanted to include it.
Yeah.
Because it's set in Japan, made by a Japanese developer rather than by the Superhot team. So it's going to be basically like, I would guess the conversation was like, hey, we really like Superhot. We want to make that. Can we just license it and make a Japanese version? And it's called Superhot JP, and it's going to come on PS4 before any other console. So it could be an exclusive.
Yeah.
I just think this is really cool. Superhot rules if you haven't played it. Did Superhot VR end up coming to PSVR?
Yes.
It did?
Yeah.
I think that's still
and
one
it's
of the best.
not as good, but it's still awesome.
Yeah. It's like one of the best VR experiences. It's a lot of fun. Probably doesn't work that well without room scale.
No, it's a little like going full 360 gets a little wonky on it, but it's really stylish and it's really fun. It just doesn't work as well as some of the other versions do, but it's a totally great game to grab on PSVR.
Yeah.
Since it's actually set in Japan, there's going to be so many unnecessary casualties. Yeah, I mean, where are you? And you're in karaoke bars and on bullet trains.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
How many poor people just trying to get between cities are going to get shot in the process?
Yeah, or all those people.
Have civilians.
I was just trying to sing Total Eclipse of the Heart, and this very slow bullet killed me.
Yeah.
Is that how it's going to be? I assume it would be pretty like an emptier room.
I don't
One of
think
them
they have
soon.
civilians in
Yeah.
But if
Maybe
you're
they
on a
will.
bullet train, why wouldn't there be?
Yeah.
I mean, have you
Or
seen
like a
it? It's
random
just-
karaoke bar.
Why did the enemies just big red crystal men?
That's true. Not a lot makes sense in this game.
I would never want to get shot on a bullet train. The irony is too rich there. The hot spring's better though. Maybe E Honda could 100
And
hands
samurai
down.
castles.
Sweet. Yeah, that sounds
So
great.
that's a wide array of
Yeah.
I'm excited. I think it's such a clever, inventive idea for a puzzle game. There's just not much like it, and so to see them continuing to expand it, I will happily take it set in every nation. I don't know, just keep doing it. Super hot Denmark.
Hot.
around the world.
Yeah, I'm very excited. We don't know much else about when it's coming or so
Just
hopefully
that it's going to be on PS4 and PC is the plan for release. And they said at least, but the original Superhot was on Xbox One for over a year before coming to PS4. So I'm wondering if it'll be an exclusive.
yeah, that could be really interesting. At the very least, I would assume it'd be as long a time exclusive. Yeah. There is so much to look forward to. Oh my God, there are a
Yeah.
lot of games coming out. Thank you all for joining me to speak about all of these games.
Of course.
Which we'll still be able to hopefully theorize on Rage 2. In the weeks
sorry
to come.
about that.
Yeah. Hopefully you'll like Rage.
Hopefully it was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully we were totally accurate about what we said
Definitely a shared world shooter,
with Battle Royale.
battle royale mode,
Yes.
a lot like Borderlands. Yep.
Yeah.
We know.
Hopefully with bikes also.
Yes.
That you can call back to you.
Bike chat again.
Ooh, Bike Chat. Welcome back to Bike Chat. No, that is the end of Podcast Beyond. Thank you so much, Tina, Brian, Alana, for joining me. If you liked the show, if you liked Bike Chat, please tell a friend. We are on YouTube every week. You can find us at youtube.com/podcastbeyond. Or is it not?
/IGN Beyond.
Is it IGN Beyond?
We're not allowed to call
always
this a
go-
podcast anymore. It's a
Oh,
show.
really? Wow. Well, that is
Show.
my fault. Barrett, I'm sorry. Good job. Yeah, good job, Barrett. Yeah. Oh, no, Barrett. Well, I'm sorry about that. You can also find us and all the wonderful Podcast Beyond fans.
Beyond. It's not a podcast anymore, remember?
Yeah, but it always is to me. I've been listening since episode 1. Please forgive me for that. At Facebook.com/groups/
I think it is.
It is Podcast Beyond, so you're messing me up there. It's facebook.com/group/Podcast Beyond, but it's not a podcast anymore.
Not
Hey,
allowed.
it's only episode 543, all right?
We'll get used to it, yeah.
Just getting started here.
But please subscribe on youtube.com/IGN Beyond and set on your notifications so every time there's a new episode, you'll get to see it immediately. And thank you all so much for joining me, and have an awesome pre-E3. Because we got a lot of time. Yeah. So good luck for these next few weeks.
Beyond.
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 Beyond.